Of WJCT's First Coast Connect, bringing to the community innovation in transportation planning, commuter services, clean fuels, and intelligent transportation systems. More at northfloridatpo.com.
Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com.
This is WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. Up next, national and local news from NPR and the WJCT News team.
Good morning and welcome to First Coast Connect. I'm Dan Scanlon in for Ann Schindler this morning. It's Friday. That means it's time for our First Coast Week in Review. Among our topics, a federal judge slamming the DeSantis administration for trying to censor abortion amendment ads. Jacksonville City Council member LeRoy Diamond wants to rescind legislation he sponsored. A state investigation begins after 7 people are killed during a gangway collapse in Georgia, and Adventure Landing is in hot water for violating child labor laws. We're talking about all that and more with our panel of local media experts. Later, a telethon raises awareness for homelessness. Join the conversation. Give us a call at 904-549-2937.
I'm Corva Coleman. The presidential candidates will both campaign in Texas today. Former President Donald Trump will stump with Texas Republican Senator Ted Cruz. Vice President Harris will campaign with Cruz's opponent, Democratic Congressman Colin Allred, and music icon Beyonce. Harris continues to criticize Trump for alleged comments he made praising Hitler. These comments were first reported by The Atlantic. Campaigning in Atlanta last night, Harris says the alleged comments are disturbing.
Take a moment to think about what that means. That Trump said, quote, Hitler did some good things. And that Trump wished he had generals like Hitler's who would be loyal to Trump and not to America's Constitution.
Trump is vehemently denying the comments published by The Atlantic. He told Fox News that the reporter made up the story.
He made a statement that I'm like Hitler. It's just couldn't be further from the truth. It's just the opposite, actually.
Trump has previously praised dictators and said if elected, he would deploy armed forces against American protesters and political opponents. The high cost of housing is a factor for many U.S. voters in this election. NPR's Windsor Johnston reports that's very true in key swing states such as in the Sun Belt.
Casey Dawkins is a professor of urban studies and planning at the University of Maryland. The candidates have different approaches when it comes to easing the high cost of housing, but he says they're putting forth some similar ideas.
They're both mentioning the importance of trying to incentivize local governments to adopt more innovative regulatory practices and to sort of remove the regulatory restrictions on housing. They both mentioned that. Both mentioned sort of opening up federal lands to housing construction.
Demand for housing continues to outpace supply in the U.S., driving up prices. Many Gen Z voters in particular say home ownership is currently out of the reach. Windsor Johnston, NPR News.
An Ohio judge has struck down the state's abortion ban as unconstitutional. From Ohio Public Media, Sarah Donaldson reports Ohio voters enshrined abortion rights in the state constitution.
Passed in 2019 and called the heartbeat bill by its backers, the Ohio law would ban abortion procedures statewide after about 6 weeks of pregnancy. Now that law's been permanently blocked by a county judge who writes, quote, the state cannot properly undermine this right to an abortion. Advocates call it a momentous ruling, but Gabe Mann with the group Abortion Forward says there's still work to be done.
We're absolutely looking to see if it gets appealed, and we've been talking to voters about that this entire year.
Anti-abortion groups call the amendment to enshrine access to the procedure extreme and harmful. For NPR News, I'm Sarah Donaldson in Columbus, Ohio.
This is NPR.
And you're listening to WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. Good morning. I'm Stephen Ponson. It's 9:04. The former El Jefe restaurant on Edgewood Avenue in Murray Hill will be the new location for Hamburger Mary's. The Jacksonville location of Hamburger Mary's burned down on Beach Boulevard last year, and drag performer Jordan Shepard is reopening the bar and restaurant at the Murray Hill location. The Jacksonville Business Journal reports a vacant former retail space next door will also be transformed into a banquet room and clothing shop. The drag venue will be right across the street from the Walrus, which also regularly hosts drag events. Florida is suing the federal government over a Justice Department decision to block the state from investigating an assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump. In a complaint filed Wednesday, Florida Attorney General Ashley Moody argued the state has a right to investigate given the attempt happened at Trump's West Palm Beach golf course.
It is very common for state investigators, state prosecutors to work with our federal prosecutors and federal agents on dual tracks with different purposes.
Moody's lawsuit stems around a federal law that she says bars Florida from getting involved in the Justice Department's investigation. She claims this violates the 10th Amendment, which protects state governments from federal overreach. She's asking for a judge to rule the department's actions as unconstitutional. This afternoon in Jacksonville, sunny skies and highs in the mid-80s are in store. We'll have a light breeze as well. Sunny and warmer this weekend, highs both Saturday and Sunday in the mid-80s.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Nature Conservancy, working across oceans and isles to cut carbon emissions, protect lands and waters, and support local communities for a future where people and nature thrive. nature.org/solutions.
Over at Adventure Landing in Jacks Beach, the amusement park is facing trouble for breaking some child labor laws. And in Georgia, a number of Jacksonville residents were among those killed when a gangway collapsed on the way to Sapelo Island. State investigation underway, but now locals pushing for federal involvement, and there's also a lawsuit. To talk about all that and more, I'm joined by a great cast of characters today, and I mean intellectually well-equipped characters. We've got Casmira Harrison, who sits near me, local government reporter at Jacksonville Today. Good morning.
Good morning, Dan.
We got Tricia Booker, author and journalism professor at UNF. Good morning.
Good morning.
We've got Renata Gregorio, reporter at First Coast News. How are you?
Hey, pretty good. Thanks for having me.
And we've, of course, got Jack Webb, attorney and former Jacksonville City Council president and a fellow New York guy. How are you, Jack?
Hey, Dan. Good morning. How are you?
Thanks.
Go Mets.
Well, maybe go Mets. Go Yankees, whatever. Let's kick things off with the recent federal ruling blocking Florida's attempts to suppress pro-abortion rights ads supporting Amendment 4. We all know the governor was in town this week to discuss the other amendment. And his wife was here to discuss the abortion, or vice versa. Lots of DeSantis's around here for anti-amendment talk. So, Jack, obviously the federal judge is blocking Florida's attempts to suppress the amendment to limit government interference with abortion. The state launched a campaign against Amendment 4, with the Department of Health sending letters to TV stations threatening criminal prosecution if they aired pro-amendment ads. But Floridians Protecting Freedom filed a lawsuit. And U.S. District Judge Mark Walker issued a temporary restraining order, basically using the following language to keep it simple for the state of Florida. It's the First Amendment, stupid. So let's just talk about the fact that in less than 2 weeks, this amendment is on the ballot for us to vote on. The state is spending a lot of money to fight against it and the marijuana, and there's legal action.
Well, where does one begin? I mean, that's pretty damning language coming out of a federal court judge directed at the elected officials. But, you know, it is what it is. I guess I read that the comments from the governor's press people afterwards, and they were none too impressed with it. My understanding is that there's a full and final hearing October 29th, and Ashley Moody has continued to make the same arguments they made in the preliminary hearing. So I think they'll probably fall on their swords perhaps on the 29th, and I think a permanent injunction will be entered. I couldn't imagine, and they may file some sort of a petition for an emergency review with the 11th Circuit, but I can only imagine the giggles in chambers in the 11th Circuit in the hallways in Atlanta when they read, well, they've already read the decision with regards to its First Amendment stupid. This one, I guess, should come as no surprise, from this administration, in that, again, who cares about the Constitution, right? Why not? I mean, what I find problematic about this is this guy's a lawyer, right? This guy's a lawyer, and yet he just seemingly has no problem supporting positions or taking positions that are patently unconstitutional. Again, whether it's commercial exploitation of that. This is not a constitutional issue, but commercial exploitation of state parks, whether it's use of taxpayer funds to travel around running for president and then shielding those records from the public. It doesn't really matter. So I think I think he's got some comeuppance here from the court. I think it'll be sustained on the 29th. I will say this, that what I found interesting as well was that the lawyer from the whatever it was, the Department of whatever it was, resigned. I mean, he signed the letter, but that went forward, whatever, trying to support this position.
Yeah, that was John Wilson from the Florida Department of Health. Yes.
Thank you very much. Filling in the gaps there, Dan. He resigned. Now, he resigned. I still don't really understand what happened there. Did he sign the letter over his objections, or did somebody sign his name to it? But after the letter went public or was presented in support of the position, he resigned from his position with regard citing conscience issues.
Yeah, ethical concerns related to letters sent to broadcasters stating his conscience could not align with the actions taken, thanks to the research of the folks behind the glass on that one.
Right, good deal. Yeah, what's interesting, too, is that, Ashley Moody challenged the sufficiency of the constitutional amendment, based on its language back in February of this year. And Muniz, who was the Chief Justice, they issued a per curiam decision on April 1st that said, hey, this thing's good to go. You may support it, you may not support it, but it's not constitutionally infirm, and it's on the ballot. So I guess left with no alternatives, the DeSantis administration did what it did, and it has now been, once again, its knuckles have been wrapped.
Although, I mean, you say it should come as no surprise, but and yet here we are. I find myself surprised because he kind of got his mission accomplished. I mean, he used a bully pulpit to threaten these television stations with no teeth at all, and he got the publicity he was seeking. I mean, he got out there that he was suing them because he thought these ads, or he was giving them a cease and desist because he thought these ads were misleading, and that's what the public absorbed. In some ways, I think, although he did get his knuckles rapped, it also was kind of a successful mission. It's baffling to me that he would. I mean, to me, it speaks of just a lot of chutzpah to say to a television station, you can't run an ad, particularly when the addendum that he successfully got added to the amendment is full of the same kinds of misleading language that he is potentially accusing other venues of airing.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that. Mission accomplished, right? In certain respects. But whatever your position is on the amendment, vote your conscience one way or another. It's unfortunate that the state of Florida is once again locked in these culture wars, playing political ping pong here. But it's with regards to the arguments as to the ambiguity in the constitutional amendment. All right, well, get in line. I mean, there's going to be ambiguities in every constitutional amendment. That's why we have a state legislature. But legislature doesn't seemingly do its job these days. It's not a deliberative body anymore. It's given gerrymandering that's occurred over the last 10, 15 years in the state. It is a non-deliberative body. So forcing through statutory modifications to the existing abortion law is what propelled this amendment. So Governor DeSantis, welcome to Florida.
Well, Jacksonville Today just published a very, very comprehensive look at all the amendments. I took part on one of the easier ones with the pros and cons as presented. So there is great information on Jacksonville Today right now that you can find that information. But I'll tell you, 40 years of voting in the state of Florida, and I look at amendments and I go, what? I don't understand their language. It's poorly written in the summaries. Even when you get in and the governor says, look at them. During yesterday's Casey DeSantis news conference regarding the amendment for marijuana, sheriffs were saying, read the amendment and you'll understand where we're coming from. Well, maybe they wrote that one a little better. I looked at it one glance and didn't get it. So you guys, you've been out hearing this. You've seen the governor and Casey out on their anti-amendment tours. What are the thoughts about the implications for freedom of political speech in Florida going forward when you've got the heavy hitters like doctors and sheriffs and governor and first lady out there?
Well, I think any individual's got a right to speak on any issue. I mean, that's the First Amendment. I mean, government can't stop it, but that, that, yeah. I mean, so, and again, I have no problem with faith informing politics, but at the same time, it's got to be rational. It's got to be consistent. So for the governor to, I don't know what the governor's appealing to, but again, I'll just leave it at that. I think that faith informing political decisions or political choices must be consistent and rational. So to the extent that you might be pro-life, that makes you anti-abortion, it also it lends someone, I guess, to question what are your positions on prenatal care? What are your positions with regards to postnatal care? What are your positions with gun violence? What are your positions with regards to capital punishment? All of these are life issues are not a la carte. They're They're part of one package. And for the governor to exploit one particular issue for his own political gain, I find unnerving, and to use Florida statute and public money to go after media, go after individuals or entities that have a different point of view is disgusting.
We got an email from Ricardo. Has anyone commented on the irony of Amendment 4 financial impact statement, which warns of litigation costs to the same state that keeps passing unconstitutional laws that get challenged and has a governor and attorney general who don't mind wasting our money on frivolous lawsuits? Again, this is Ricardo's email, wasting our money on frivolous lawsuits against the federal government and other questionable practices against Florida citizens. The fight against some other things came up today as to whether or not. We want to tell you we're talking about the week's biggest headlines here on First Coast Connect. So join the conversation. Call us at 904-549-2937. Send an email to firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. You can also watch our program live stream right now on Facebook and on the WJCT YouTube page. Let us go to something else that Casmira Harrison has been covering a lot. And Kaz, the special taxing district that was created a year ago for Hog Pen Creek districts and done by a lawmaker who then ended up on very important military duty and now says, I didn't sponsor that legislation. So, Kaz, you and I were talking about this yesterday. Go for it.
He claims no part in it. So these folks got a tax bill in the mail. We're surprised by it. And we ran a couple of stories about how it all happened. And then I got an email from Councilman Diamond that said, yeah, I'm seeking to dissolve this, but I really had no part in it. And so I think you should make a correction to your story. And I was like, what? So I went down a rabbit hole trying to find out how exactly a city councilman can put forth a bill that he didn't necessarily support. And it turns out that you don't actually have to support a bill in the city of Jacksonville if you bring it forward. Legally speaking, I talked to the general counsel's office, and they said there's no rule that says, hey, this council member has to support this bill and push it forward and be there for all the votes. There's nothing to do with that. So it's an interesting turn of events
This
here.
seems
I
kind of
think.
like Bizarro World. I mean, it seems like the bill was put forth by him. His staff drafted it. He brought it forward, but
And they worked with the general counsel's office to work with the residents to try to bring it up to council. Councilman Diamond's name was on the initial legislation. And city council, through all of those committees, it was a district priority.
Well,
So-
I did a story in the middle of his deployment as to who was in charge. And his council aide was doing a lot of work on things. And the council aide told me in a response that he was working with other council
They
members
often
to
do.
get things done.
Yeah.
But the bottom line was that Rory Diamond on deployment was not actively involved. Apparently, he could not vote. So let me just, Renata, what do you think about the fact that here's an absentee? And there were a lot of complaints that he was gone and who was helping us here. And now he says, I didn't do this.
It makes me wonder, I don't know if you all have found this in your reporting. I haven't specifically reported on this, but are they looking at changing anything and saying, hey, this is a bill that came out of your office, but obviously you don't support it, maybe we'll change something here. Do you know?
I've seen no, I've seen a lot of folks saying that they were misled, but they're not necessarily saying that they were misled by any one point of contact in this whole thing.
Okay.
By way of full disclosure, as you're
Like
aware,
nobody's blaming anyone.
right. Oh, yeah, it's interesting. Is that first of all, before the stories ran, I was contacted by a number of the residents of the community. It was right around the time that we had resolved the Brentwood liquor store issue. So I got a call, blah, blah, blah. So we're looking into this thing, and I had some conversations with current council representatives and, not with Mr. Diamond. I called Mr. Diamond. He was back, but he never called me back. So whatever. So I talked to some other people trying to get the lowdown on what went down on this thing, because there were real problems with it, the way it was enacted, whether or not it was legal, and blah, blah, blah. Because we were working on a declaratory judgment action to have it deemed void. That said, I was informed in conversations that there were representations made to council representatives as to the sufficiency of the process at what went down. Reading your wonderful article, I got to tell you, there's some unhappy people in City Hall right now with regards to this was not a failure of the process. This was, the council was there were misrepresentations made to the council. That's what I find fascinating about this thing.
Yeah.
But isn't it incumbent upon the council to kind of do the research?
Yes, and in fact, but here's the conundrum. The council representatives are elected, supposedly a part-time job. They rely upon the expertise of the professionals, whether it be in the planning department, whether it be public works, whether it be their own lawyers, that is the general counsel. When I was on the city council, I used to fight with public works all the time because, they want to disclaim liability, responsibility for certain issues because their budgets are stretched thin. So that was a lot of the problem here. But yeah.
Well, we've got a caller, Mark on the West Side. Mark, you got a logical question about this one. Go for it.
I want to know, I've got a creek that runs through my neighborhood, and I want to know, the federal government used to dredge that all the time. Are we going to be on the hook for that now, or why is there so special that they have to pay for it themselves? And am I going to have to pay for mine down the future, or what?
Well, that's a really
Thank
good
you, Mark.
question. That's a really good question, and that was one of the issues that the residents were saying. Well, listen, the silting of the creek is not tidal. It's not at the mouth of the creek where it hits Pablo Creek. It's at the headwaters. So where's all that dirt coming from? It's coming from where? Sandalwood Canal. And so this wasn't really an issue until we curbed and guttered. Was it Pablo Avenue, whatever it is over there? San Pablo, whatever it is.
Yeah,
Hodges, or whatever it is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, whatever. So this is an infrastructure improvement. This is a consequence of infrastructure improvement that arguably the federal government, the state, and the city should be responsible for. And this was a cute way to push the burden back on the citizens, whereas in the past, dredging projects the tab had been picked up by the city. So,
well, the bottom line, Kaz, is that right now that assessment's on hold, if I'm correct, and Roy Diamond is working to withdraw or change the bill, but there's been some dichotomy in the city council. Some are a little chastising of him, others are supporting him for doing the right thing, right?
Yes. Council member Carlucci said, it's usually a district priority gets supported by the other district members, which kind of goes back to Councilman Salem's point that we were misled.
Mm-hmm.
So if everybody supports it, if people are telling you that this is a good thing, and the council member's not there to say anything different, then you're going to support the bill.
So with Diamond now working to dissolve this thing, does it affect his standing, which obviously, as I said earlier, him not being there for a while certainly didn't help him either?
I hope so. I imagine so. I mean, he's working really hard to get this whole thing dissolved. On the other hand, I did hear that maybe there's an effort on the side to kind of temporarily postpone it. I'm not entirely sure.
And what does this say for other neighborhoods who have similar issues and maybe face the prospect of getting a massive increase on a bill because they want to get into this? Any thoughts?
Well, I think to Renata's point, somebody dropped the ball here. Maybe it was Diamond's office, maybe it was the city council, maybe it was staff, but the process certainly did not go the way a process should. And I don't think we're hearing anybody who is really evaluating how this happened without the neighbors knowing about it. I mean, I think there were some who knew. There are a lot who didn't.
Well, it was interesting because there were preliminary petitions that went out because the first attempt to get this thing done was pursuant to city ordinance. Okay,
It was a completely different program.
completely different program, and there were petitions that went out and were collected, but I don't think they ever got the requisite level of support. They couldn't establish the evidence, at least when it was.
The board members are saying that they did, that they got 2/3 amount of support by those petitions. But the residents who signed those petitions, at least some of them, are saying that they only signed this preliminary petition to gather more information. And then they didn't hear a thing.
And then Robin Lum, former council member, went downtown to the general counsel's office and requested to see the petitions, and the response was not satisfactory.
Let's wrap this segment up with Linda from Mandarin, who's got a very good question. Linda?
Okay, guys, I know you guys are trying to be very diplomatic, but let's be frank and Linda. If we have a legislator and the supporting council people that are proposing legislation, and I know nobody's going to attack him because he was on military duty, but if he doesn't know what his office is proposing, what he's proposing, we need a recall. We don't need legislators or other city council members to say, well, that's in your district, we're going to sign off. But that's revenue that impacts citizens. We don't need a good old boys, mostly, and city council now is good old boys, club, okay, that's your deal. And you find out that the council person doesn't even know that his own legislation, he needs to be recalled.
All right.
He needs to focus on one thing. I mean, that's just kind of basic, right? Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Linda. Any wrap-up comments on this segment here?
I think it raises a question, under the charter. If a council member is not able to serve, for whatever purpose, maybe it's health, maybe it's a deployment, whatever, understand. Thank you for your service to the nation. But on the other hand, I guess provisions need to be made to make certain that these types of things don't happen.
You're still serving your country in this capacity.
Mm-hmm.
This is a very important way to serve your country.
All right. Join the conversation. You can call us, remember, at 904-549-2937. Send an email to firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. Also watch us live stream at our WJCT YouTube page or Facebook. Let us move on to what may be the most tragic news of this week. We lost 4 members of Jacksonville's community when they were standing on a gangway on their way to a Gullah Geechee event on Sapelo Island in Georgia. And this is the same company, the same gangway that also had a similar collapse in St. Mary's, Georgia in 2022. So, Renata, I saw you out there, live shots. We had a prayer service last night at St. Paul AME for the local victims, 2 of whom went to that church. This is a tragedy, and we have the largest Gullah Geechee community outside. So, Renata, what are your thoughts, and what did you learn this week?
Yeah, it was really amazing last night to see all of the different groups of people who came out, because we had people who were representing the Gullah Geechee community and came from there. There were people who went to the church that some of the victims went to, some from other churches. There was a pastor who came from Georgia and was involved when they started immediately getting all of the survivors and trying to help them at a church there. So it's really been a big outpour of people trying to help the families, but also the big question now is just what happened and trying to push for answers there.
And the state, I believe, yesterday actually posted or is going to post a sign that says you do not stand on these anymore. You transit them. I guess there's something to do with weight transfer. But this 80-foot long, 8-foot wide gangway collapsed in the middle, did it not?
Yeah, it appears to have collapsed on the middle because you can see it on both sides of where it was connected. And so the way it worked is it was on a regular dock, and then it was 80 feet out to a floating dock, and that's where people would get on the ferry and load up from there. It seems to have collapsed in the middle. I actually talked to a structural engineer about it. He was not involved in the construction of this, but he was able to just give some insight. And he was saying there are a number of different things that kind of go into it here. One of them is just that it was so long. He said that's pretty long for an aluminum gangway. The next part is that the water levels at that area fluctuate quite a bit. On a normal day, they'll go up to 6 feet during the tides twice a day. And then right after Milton, it was up to 9 feet, according to the NOAA, the National Atmospheric Oceanic Administration. And so he said that also is quite a bit on any type of structure to just go and bend, or not quite bend, but, to move around. And then I was asking, well, then, what could have gone wrong? And he was saying maybe if there was an anomaly with the welding in the middle, since it's so long, it had to have pieces welded together, coupled with the length, coupled with the fluctuations in water levels. Maybe all of those together could have been something. It's still kind of just his educated guess right now.
The perfect storm of bad news.
Yeah. But that is what he had to say as a structural engineer. We are still waiting on the investigation.
But the St. Mary's, there was a lawsuit on that one from 2022. Obviously, in this case now, I do believe Ben Crump is working with some people to sue. There's, I think, another lawsuit. So many of these victims' families are now suing, and there's a call for a federal investigation as well. I would think so.
Right. At the time, Ben Crump, Attorney Ben Crump, and the families he was representing, they weren't quite sure who exactly they were going to direct the lawsuit at. As of just the other day, they hadn't quite filed it yet. But of course, we'll see where it goes. It could be directed at the company that built the gangway because they were involved in another lawsuit in coastal Georgia.
Yeah,
So we'll
Crescent
see.
Marine Equipment is the name of the company, and they were the ones that built the one that collapsed in September 2022 in St. Mary's, Georgia, and that injured 17 people. In this case, with the age, I think, and the depth of the water at Sapelo Island, it was a massive tragedy with 7 people. And the stories of heroism, of saving the baby, were just amazing. But some fine, upstanding church members from Jacksonville went down with this gangway. Any other thoughts before we move on?
I'm fascinated by the possible connection to the hurricane. I mean, I think we have to start looking at hurricanes and the damage they inflict very differently, particularly if just the extreme tides and perhaps it being submerged. I mean, I don't know whether it was in the hurricane, but I think that we have to start looking at how this extreme weather affects not just our coastal areas, but our structures very differently.
Especially since there's so many bridges that need to be updated.
Absolutely.
To me, one thought comes that you build a flotation device in the middle of long items that gives support, that can flex with the tide, that holds the middle, so that as it goes up and down with the water level, hopefully there's something underneath. And that sounds like a simple solution, but again, I am no engineer.
Like a hinge or something like that. What I find amazing is what you brought up before, Dan, is that there might be a design flaw here that should have been that was known to the company after this thing, the St. Mary's collapse, correct? And does that create an affirmative obligation to report the design flaw to your other customers? That this is very similar to what we have here. This is what happened, and that's what I'm sure that's what Mr. Crump and his legal associates are looking into right now.
And Renata, I said perfect storm, but I guess obviously here we are with an 80-foot long ramp, gangway that was subjected to multiple tropical systems over the past year or two, and maybe not designed to handle that.
And something interesting, too, I know perfect storm would make sense to say here just with all the things coming together if that's what happened. But if you talk to some of the people who are on Sapelo Island, I know one person who's really outspoken, he's an advocate, was involved in the first federal lawsuit that was helping the Gullah Geechee people and community there. He'll say, I could have said this was coming because we've been overlooked by so long by the government.
Okay. Well, we're talking about the top stories of the week with our panel of journalists. Join the conversation, 904-549-2937. Email us at friscosconnect@wjct.org. Let's move on to a story that may not have happened if development hadn't been stalled. Adventure Landing is a landmark in Jacksonville Beach with the go-kart track and all the other things it does, and it's managed to stave off being redeveloped into a housing project for another year. But then this week, the U.S. Labor Department fined Adventure Landing $151,000 plus for violating child labor laws. The details: 14 and 15-year-old employees found working past legal quitting time, 7 o'clock on weeknights, 9 on Fridays, and 14-year-olds were also assigned as attendants on the elevated water slides, a violation of Fair Labor Standards Act. Adventure Landing's response says it's taking prompt measures to strengthen its compliance program, and a compliance agreement was signed to prevent further violations. I don't know about you. If I were up on one of the water slides and I saw an attendant who was way younger than me, I might be a little cynical. Thoughts?
Go ahead.
As a mother of 3 kids, I'd rather there not be child labor laws, but but I think that I lost what I was going to say. I'm sorry.
Go for it, Jack.
Go ahead.
All right. Whatever your views are on the labor laws, I mean, if they are what they are the law of the land. You got to comply with the law.
And
That
that's where I was
said,
going
if
with
you're
it.
cutting corners, if you're cutting corners on child labor law, what else are you cutting corners on? And that's what frightens me.
And this is the second time that they've done this.
Yeah.
For what it's worth, though,
Is that enough money to
I would
punish?
think if I'm living in Jacksonville Beach and I'm 16 years old, it might be a cool summer job to work there, and you might want to be there because it's better than working flipping burgers. I would
No
think,
kidding.
and so you probably want to do it, but again, 16 years old, I would hope. I had to undergo a lot of training when I came here, a lot of stuff on the legal stuff when I came here 2 years ago, and at every other job I've had in the past 30 years. I'm hoping there's good safety training for anybody who works throwing people down water slides or driving go-karts around concrete tracks. I just think that you got to keep your eyes open on that.
Yeah, my daughter worked briefly at Adventure Landing. She's like the day after she turned 16, she got a job there and quit because she was overworked. She had no training at all. And she wasn't at the top of the water slides, but
kinda damning.
I can't help but wonder if this is going to become more frequent in the wake of Florida passing laws that make it much easier for younger children to work longer. We have really lifted a lot of the child labor restrictions in Florida, and I think it kind of paves the way for people to cut corners.
Weren't there some attempts at some state legislation as well regarding child labor and allowing younger ages, or is that from another universe I'm thinking of?
No, we lightened child labor laws here in Florida to allow
Just
longer
recently, I
hours.
think, yeah.
Yeah.
And at the expense, some opponents were saying, to their study, their social life, their after-school activities, et cetera, which are part of molding a young person into who they become as an adult. I mean, I worked in a delicatessen. I stacked beer. I spit ribs. I slapped chickens on rotisseries. I poked my finger through those things all the time.
How strong were the child labor laws back when you were doing that?
That's New York City. It was Merritt Farms. I don't think they exist anymore. And I will tell you, along with cleaning the downstairs bathroom where the rat lived, who knows?
What was his name, by the way?
Harsh.
And no, we didn't give a name. Well, maybe somebody else did. But the bottom line is that, of course, that was a long time ago, and I have no memory of any safety. I was just told the barbecue sauce is going to sting. Don't get an open cut near it.
Yeah,
that's about it. I would hope that there's more public safety education for teens as they do jobs that are potentially a little more active than just
but to your point, though,
stacking papers.
To the extent that the legislature's relaxed the restrictions, these guys still got fined. So they're apparently beyond the pale. And again, compliance is compliance. Whether it's there's no robust compliance mechanism here, is what I'm seeing. If they're violating these laws, and if there's no robust compliance with respect to this particular issue, what are the compliance requirements with regards to safety inspections, OSHA type of issues? What's going on out there? That's
well, my guess would be someone complained. someone noticed something they didn't like and filed a complaint, OSHA probably can't get to every place to check everything on their own. So, again, any knowledge as to where this complaint came from?
I don't know. $150,000 doesn't seem like a huge fine to me for the business that Adventure Landing does. The lifting of restrictions, I think, has hit mainly poor immigrant communities and children who need to work to support their families. And to that extent, it really is. I mean, these kids might need the work, but it is also taking advantage of the need that these children have by allowing them to take a job that is going to severely restrict their ability to become educated and to become healthy and to live a more normal childhood.
You know, Adventure Landing operates 11 operations like this around the country, and I have to think that with all the news of them going and staying there and going has hurt their business somewhat. Does this further detract from this as being the family-friendly place to go?
No.
Okay.
This
is radio, folks. We need to talk.
I've never been there, so.
I am sorry to say I haven't either.
Yeah.
I'm fairly new to Jacksonville though, so I'm still weaving around.
Oh no, I've been there a bunch of times, and they used to do a haunted house. They do a Christmas tree sales. They're a fixture next to other fixtures like Taco Lou and the microbrewery. They are a place to go and used to be routinely packed all the way through the season. So and they still have one more season to go.
I think their struggles are a reflection of probably they're not what they once were. I mean, I don't know. Demographics change, people change, interests change. I mean, kids spend more of their time on cell phones now than they do going to Adventure Landing, right? I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's just my opinion on it. Maybe this issue just may be a result of their financial struggles. Obviously.
Well, I got an 8-year-old grandson. If we told him about this place, he'd love to go.
All right.
Period. So
might get him a job.
Radio, I'm not going to comment on that one. All right. The final question here is, where were the kids' parents in all this? I mean, you allow your child to do something that is thrilling, interesting, and maybe some concerns.
Where are the parents of the children
who are operating, who are doing these?
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Renata.
Oh, for the children who are operating.
Yeah.
I feel like my first thought too was maybe there are a lot of the kids are the ones who are able to work in this country, and so they're kind of forced into that even though they're so young. I mean, that's just, I know, is one thing that happens. I don't know if that has anything to do with like what's happening here, but something that also has to do with parents is the parents who now will be going, because you take your kids to go to Adventure Landing. Are they going to be thinking like about this? Is this something, when people hear about the stance of another organization, are you still going to eat there or get coffee there and that sort of thing? It brings to mind one of those questions that people have just as consumers.
Correct. Right now, onions on your fast food burger. That is a concern, and I'm sure many people are transferring. All right, guys. Renata Gregorio, Casmira Harrison, Tricia Booker, Jack Webb, journalists and educators, all thanks for being here. And we're going to move up next, tapping into the power of sport. Hall of Famer LeRoy Butler is right now in the JCT studios, and he's right down the hall after this, hosting the second annual Make the Call telethon. He's teaming up with Changing Homelessness and First Coast News to raise funds and awareness for homelessness in Florida. LeRoy Butler, thank you very much for being here.
Excuse me.
That's okay. We caught him drinking the coffee.
Well, this has been a lot of fun. It really has, because I remember my mother and my grandmother used to always say that the real heroes, they're not on cartoons and they don't have capes and they can't fly. The real heroes, they help people who they don't know. And when I grew up in extreme poverty.
Blodgett Homes. I'm old enough to remember that. Yeah.
I mean, and when I tell people my story, they think I'm making it up, how bad it was. And that I made it all the way there to like be in the Hall of Fame. But like, man, that was a horrible place to raise kids. My mom was my hero. My grandparents were great. My family was great. But I saw people who were living on the street, and sometimes no fault of your own. And then we had a couple of hurricanes come through, then people get displaced. So that's why it's been so important to me to try to help people and families to get back on their feet.
Well, let's give folks a snapshot here. LeRoy Butler grew up in poverty, a native of Jacksonville. He's an FSU alum. 12-year career from 1990 to 2001 as a safety for Green Bay Packers in the NFL. Widely recognized in sports history for his legendary Lambeau leap. And you had some medical issues as a young man that some people would be amazed to hear he plays football. And now you're an ambassador for changing homelessness, committed to using your platform to increase deeply affordable housing. And what you're doing right now is we're doing a telethon to raise money. But if that's not enough, the bold guy that you are, you've asked sports commissioners for 4 major sports leagues to each invest $1 million to Florida cities, those with professional sports teams, in response to a Florida House bill that supports unhoused veterans, individuals, and families. You sent them to the Hockey League, National Football League, National Major League Baseball, and National Basketball Association. That takes a lot of guts and hopes and prayers that they're going to respond and say, LeRoy, yeah, we'll send you the $1 million.
I should have asked them for $50 million because you would think about the fans in there that fill the stadiums, the fans that come, they may not know about it. But, you know, the NFL is a nonprofit and they give lots of money to a lot of causes. But this one is right in your backyard. And in the state of Florida, it may be illegal to be homeless. So I don't want to sit around and wait for families to get some veteran who doesn't have the means to have affordable housing or somewhere if the shelters are over flooded with people and just see them sitting in jail. So we want to help them.
So along with doing that, right now in our TV studio from right now till 8 o'clock at Festival Park Avenue, there is the Make the Call Telethon. What is that? What are you trying to do with the telethon?
You remember, I'm 56, but telethons were back long time ago.
I did many, yes.
Remember Jerry
Lewis, yeah.
One of the biggest ones.
But what are you doing? What are you doing with this? What are you trying to do with this?
And that's
telethon?
what we want to do. We want people to be able to call in and pledge whatever you can, and that's the whole thing of it. People want action, call to action, grassroots, knocking on doors, making phone calls. So you get a chance to call in
at 904-516-2551.
Thank you for saying that.
904-516-2551.
Yes.
And don't forget, too, that you're going to be doing a celebrity appearance at Culver's Monument Road from noon to 3 tomorrow as part of this.
Yes, and I think a lot of Packer fans are in town. We love Culver's, of course, but you can swing by and still make a donation because I just want to be in the community. I love the community here in Jacksonville and what Jacksonville has done for me.
Well, do not forget the Changing Homelessness telethon right now here at WJCT. You can call, you can question, you can make a donation.
Present American trumpeter and composer Chris Bodie, Tuesday, February 18th, 2025. Known for favorites such as his pop instrumental album Impressions. More information at floridatheater.com.
Wayne Hogan of the Terrell Hogan Personal Injury and Wrongful Death Law Firm. When people are hurt through no fault of their own, answering who, what, when, where, why, and how is critical to proving the truth. More at terrellhogan.com.
On the next Florida Roundup, the fight over 4. Amendment 4 would put abortion protections in the state constitution. The battle over putting the proposal on the ballot continues even as Floridians start to vote. The state claims thousands of signatures were fraudulent. A state agency has posted a website against the referendum and has threatened television stations airing ads in favor of it. How has all of this affected your vote? Email us radio@thefloridaroundup.org. I'm Tom Hudson. Then join us Friday noon until 1.
Randy Newman is one of the rock world's wittiest and most cynical songwriters, and the composer of the scores for Toy Story and A Bug's Life and many other films. He's the subject of a new biography. On the next Fresh Air, our 1998 interview with him, and Ken Tucker tells us about the new biography. Join us.
Today at 1 on WJCT News 89.9.
The finish line is almost in sight. What happened this week that might tell us something more about how it all ends?
I will end inflation. I will stop the invasion of criminals into our country.
Harris hits back. She says the former president doesn't want a military loyal to the Constitution, but
he wants a military that is loyal to him.
We catch up on all of it on the Friday News Roundup next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
And welcome back as we approach National Veterans and Military Families Appreciation Month in November. It is a time to honor and recognize the incredible sacrifices made by our military personnel and their families. Camille Gasper is Vice President of Community Engagement, joining us again to discuss the various events and initiatives the credit union is supporting this year. You know, Camille, I've been getting a lot of emails this week about a lot of activities that ViStar is doing. So you are not an unfamiliar name to me, and you and I have talked on this show before about some of the events. So thanks for joining us. What are some of the specific events that ViStar is supporting this year?
So it's a pleasure to be here, Dan. Thank you so much. And so this year, ViStar is the presenting sponsor of Veterans Day admission at the Jacksonville Zoo and Garden. So on Veterans Day, November the 11th, ViStar is sponsoring active duty veterans and their dependents to enjoy the Jacksonville Zoo for free on Veterans Day. So we feel pretty excited about that. The Jacksonville Zoo and Gardens is doing amazing work in the community, and so they're a cultural attraction here. So we're excited to sponsor that event again for active duty veterans and their dependents. Just showing their military ID will grant you admission. And as well, the Cummer Museum on Sunday, November the 10th, will offer the same admission for active duty veterans and their dependents just by showing their military ID.
That is a nice combination of brainy stuff and outdoor stuff.
Yes.
Although we don't forget the Cummer Gardens themselves. That sounds like great opportunities for families to enjoy. So what else? And like I said, I get a lot of emails from ViStar. What else is happening that you're doing?
So we're sponsoring a lot because, again, a lot of individuals remember Jax Navy Federal Credit Union. So since the founding in 1952, we were Jax Navy Federal Credit Union. And so we see members all the time. They'll say, my member number is 4 digits. And, now I think we're at 7 digits for the member numbers. But the lower the member number, the long standing you are a member. And a lot of military personnel are still members and continue to be members with ViStar. So we are sponsoring the POW MIA golf tournament. We are the title sponsor of that event on November the 4th, as well as the presenting sponsor of the Jax Chamber Military Appreciation Luncheon. And then also right on Bay Street at the USS Orlick, ViStar is the title sponsor of the Armed Forces Tri-Bridge 10K that they're doing out there to support 5-star veterans and also the USS Orlick.
Yeah, the Orlick actually has a car show on December 7th. I mean, that's become a really fun place to hang out. And then don't forget, we've got the Veterans Day Parade, which Jacksonville always kicks off, and you're part of it.
We are. We'll have the ViStar employees. So everything at ViStar starts with a V. So our employee resource groups are the ViStar employees that serve. So that is our military and veteran employee resource group. So they will be supporting ViStar on the float. We'll have military personnel on the float as well, employees and dependents as well. And we're supporting the veterans community at the City of Jacksonville Parade.
Here's your T-shirt, red, white, and blue, ViStar for veterans. There you go.
Yes.
I'll give you that idea for free. ViStar also obviously offers benefits to veterans and military families. There's a discount.
There is. So at the ViStar Veterans Memorial Arena, veterans receive 10% discount year-round at the arena on concession, ticket, and parking purchases. And so, again, when the new arena was established, it was established as a veterans arena. And so we honor that as the ViStar Veterans Memorial Arena. So we give back through ticketing and discounts at the arena.
And if you go to the arena, there's certainly no lack of reminders.
Yes.
You have the flags of all of these services. You have the steps are painted with all of the services. You've got a missing soldier memorial that just got put up outside. Yes. So definitely the right place, ViStar Veterans Memorial, right there. And let's just one more time, November 4th, POW MIA Memorial Golf Tournament.
Yes.
How do you get involved in that? And you don't have to be a veteran. You can just go play golf and and raise some money, right?
Absolutely. It's raising money. It's going to be at Eagle Harbor this year. And if you just go to their website, there's a link to register to be able to participate, as well as the Armed Forces Tri-Bridge 10K through First Place Sports, also their website. Will get you the registration to participate in the race.
So obviously, if you want more information, go to vistarcu.org. That is their website, and a lot of support for the military community. Anything else you want to say about just the next month of veterans?
It's going to be great. There's a lot of amazing events. As you know, Jacksonville, I think we're the third largest military city in the United States, and so we honor that. It brings a lot of individuals here to Jacksonville. I think if you meet a lot of individuals that are active duty or they're veterans and you say, how'd you get to Jacksonville? It's because of the military, and they liked it so much that they decided to stay and raise their family. And that's how me and my family came to Jacksonville through Cecil Field. And then we liked Jacksonville so much, we decided just to stay here and make it home.
All right. We want to thank Kamal and ViStar Credit Union for being here. That is our program. Thank you. That is our program. We encourage you to send your feedback and suggestions to First Coast Connect at WJCT.org. If you missed anything, catch our rebroadcast at 8 o'clock tonight. You can also find our entire archive at WJCT.org or on your favorite podcast platform. The executive producer of First Coast Connect is David Luckin. Our show is produced admirably well by Stacey Bennett, directed by Michelle Corum. Jamie Valet is our associate producer. Thanks, Jamie. Thanks.
Health and the North Florida TPO.
Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com.
North Florida TPO, proud sponsor of WJCT's First Coast Connect, bringing to the community innovation in transportation planning, commuter services, clean fuels, and intelligent transportation systems. More at northfloridatpo.com.